No amount of AI is going to replace working for a company that doesn't have a strategy. So,
Well, actually, if it doesn't have a strategy, maybe it could.
Hello and welcome to episode 289, the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. I hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott, managing partner at B2B tech advisory firm Velocity B, and on this podcast, I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. This week, my chum and former Forrester Research Director Jeff Clark and I review our 5 effing marketing fundamentals and give some brief suggestions on how AI can be used to support each of them. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word. We'll be right back. After this word.
Are you tired of juggling multiple software tools to manage your agency? Say hello to Deltek Workbook, the ultimate solution for marketing and communication agencies. With Workbook, you can streamline your projects, resources, and finances all in one place. Imagine real-time dashboards and reports giving you full visibility into your projects, people, and financials. Plan your team's capacity weeks in advance to avoid bottlenecks while staying on budget to maximize project margins. Plus, Workbook works perfectly for both agencies and in-house marketing teams looking to boost efficiency and profitability. And here's the best part. At PCI, we're a certified Deltek partner and reseller offering expert implementation, integrations, and ongoing support to ensure your success. Want to see how Deltek Workbook can transform your operations? For a free consultation, visit pci.us/podcast today. That's pci.us/podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Ian, welcome to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. It's
Jolly good.
beautiful, and if I could just jump right into the weather. We're continuing to have summer-like weather in the afternoons. It does get a bit cool at night, but it's been sunny and dry. And so, yes, after this, I go take advantage of that. How about you?
Nice. Windy, rain, showers, and more wind. We've actually got a wind warning. I think a storm has come over from vaguely in your direction, and I don't know.
Well, it didn't hit us.
No, I meant vaguely from the west.
Yeah, okay.
And but yes, it was very. I went for a long walk this morning. It was very, when it's quite a little bit, it's not too hot and it's quite bracing.
Yep.
And you feel invigorated when you get home. It was a bit like that. So that's the first of our agenda items sorted out, the weather. And this week, and I think I alluded to it or spoke about what we're going to talk about last week was we're going to talk about AI. I know.
As in artificial intelligence, just for those of you who don't know the acronym.
And our 5 effing marketing fundamentals. So I'll do the little preamble. So we seem to have reached peak hype for AI. I think if you look at the classic Gartner hype cycle, and AI has been sucking all the oxygen out of the room of any discussion about marketing right now. But not on this show. It's a rabbit hole we've largely hopped over. However, this week, maybe we've succumbed to the inevitable and we're going to step through our 5 marketing fundamentals, briefly touch on how we use AI to help in each of those 5. As I was digging into this, some general advice that seemed to come out that applied to all the fundamentals, particularly that we need to be very cautious about pressing the easy button and outsourcing our marketing brain, which we were discussing before we press record, Jeff. And That's a big problem. It used to be we outsourced our marketing brain to the agencies, but now we're doing it to AI. And in my belief is AI might be able to help you with the how. I think the process part of the whole business of marketing will get shrunk and probably be automated, but it doesn't know the why we do things. So we should think of it as an assistant or as an intern. So that's my general point about AI before we dive into the 5. What say you, Jeff?
Well, I've always liked your point about not outsourcing your brain, and we were talking about whether you outsource it to an agency or, in this case, to AI. I think it's spot on, as they say in the United Kingdom. And we certainly don't want our listeners to think that we think that AI is just all hype, because that is not the case. So it's just that AI makes it too easy to go after the low-hanging AI fruit, So you stop using your brain, and then you find yourself just regurgitating generic marketing stuff and not really engaging prospects and buyers, because basically, you're adding to the market noise, and you're not really doing things that connect with them. So I think that's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's like we don't want to genericize our marketing.
Yeah, and it's going to be quite difficult, actually, isn't it, as we were discussing, to cover these 5 in any depth, because there's a lot of things that we think AI can help with this. So, yeah, I didn't mean that AI was just hype. I just think that we're at the top of the hype cycle as the sort of if you can picture that Gartner model. And I don't think we're going to dive down into the slope of disillusionment, but I do think that what's going to happen now is that the use cases will start to form, right? And it will get a bit more real, and we need to be focused on those, right? So, so let's kick this off. So as a reminder, and I'm sure that listeners, you've heard us bang on about the 5F in marketing fundamentals, but you can get the ebook from our website. It's actually under long plays on the menu because, why would I call it resources? That'd be too fucking easy. And those fundamentals that we discuss, and Jeff will introduce each of these as we go through them, is number 1 is the master plan, number 2, the knowledge, number 3, the story, number 4, the campaign, and number 5, machine. And just to define the rules of engagement this week, because we're doing things a little bit different, we'll do a quick introduction of the fundamental, then we'll share some ideas about how AI can help. So on to our first, Jeff.
The first one is the master plan. And of course, our audience will notice that we try to give catchy phrases to things like a marketing plan, So it's the roadmap for how marketing is going to contribute to the business. And it's where, the team, CMO's team takes the corporate goals and objectives and creates what are marketing's goals and objectives. They become the inputs to, content plans, campaign plans, operations, et cetera, everything else that the team needs to do. So that is the master plan.
Yeah, and just on the naming, quite often it's so that we can make some reference to a song, right? So if you
right.
So if you download the ebook, you'll see that the master plan we reference the song, the master plan.
Yeah.
Anyway, so so for me, I think a quick caveat before we reach for our robot assistants. I think it's important to know our master plan. And I think anybody who listens to this show will know we're going to say this, right? You need to understand your master plan and know your master plan before you look at any tactics or technologies. And that's also true of AI, right? Someone may burst into the marketing office and say, we need to do something with AI. And I think we saw that, didn't we, in the Gartner CMO priorities research? It was the Gartner one, wasn't it? And it said the third highest priority for marketers right now was to do something with AI, which we thought was, I thought it was bollocks. You wouldn't use such coarse language. So you have to have your goals and objectives defined first, then understand how any technology, process, people, and all that thing, including AI, can help. And so my main point really around the master plan, and we'll cover this more in the knowledge, but clearly tools like ChatGPT are great research assistants. And for the master plan, I think can help us get good summaries of research, best practice, and models from folks like Forrester and Gartner. So it kind of, it's like, and I think I'm going to make this reference a couple of times. It's like you can use these tools like Google on steroids, right? Where you'd have done your research, but it would have taken you a bit longer. And now you can shortcut that a little bit, I think, with tools like ChatGPT. And I think what you can then do, and I've kind of experimented this with a bit when I've created things, is it's useful to then have these tools review your plan, say like your key metrics, your goals, and spot what you might have missed. And obviously, when you do that, it does require quite a bit. In fact, when you do most of the things we're going to talk about, it's not always that simple a quick fix. You need to invest some time in prompting and getting that set up right. So then you can get something very specific in return and not just the generic stuff it's going to find on the interwebs, right? So it can be a useful exercise, I think, to discover what you're missing, especially if you've been staring at your plan for a while and you're a bit unsure about presenting it yet. Is it ready? Well, that could be a good thing to do. What say you, Jeff?
Well, I think one challenge with AI in your master plan is that the primary input is coming from other, human beings, the senior leadership, and and their business goals. So, it's largely to what you're talking about, the AI can help actually the CMO provide input into that business plan, the business planning process, and the long-term strategy. Using points you made. Plus, once business objectives are solidified, AI is best used to help you identify how marketing builds into that plan. How can we determine our goals, metrics? What are other metrics and benchmarks that people typically use? What are common dependencies, skills, technology? So things that you may, lean on an outside consultant or a Forrester and Gartner for helping you provide some guidance. You could obviously use tools like ChatGPT to do that, and also, AI tools like if you're I hate to say, a Microsoft shop. I don't know why I should say hate to say that, but tools like Microsoft Copilot can help develop the planning documents over all the sources you've created, your strategy, your goals, your metrics, your audience analysis, your persona development. And you want to make something very presentable. Something like Copilot can help make that a nice succinct document. So again, there's things that AI can help you with, but in general, there's a lot of human work that has to happen beforehand.
I love that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, no amount of AI is going to replace working for a company that doesn't have a strategy.
Well, actually, if it doesn't have a strategy, maybe it could.
But I also think, I think on each of these things we could dive down a rabbit hole. So I've got to be very cautious here. Otherwise, this show's going to go on for an hour and a fucking half. But the first, this is a bit like that stars stuff that we've talked about before, right? It's understanding where the company is. And again, that isn't something you're going to get out of AI. That's going to be something you get out of a conversation with the rest of the C-suite, right? Are we a startup? Are we a turnaround? Are we the other stars things?
The other stars.
And you can listen to a previous episode where we discuss those things, right? So shall we move on to number 2?
Number 2 is the knowledge. And this is the development of insights for both marketing and your business partners on things like, what are the buyer needs? How do we develop personas? What's a buyer journey look like, or journeys look like? What's the competitive landscape? What helps you win? What makes you lose? And so this is kind of a year-long. The knowledge is typically a year-long process where somebody in product or industry marketing is doing a lot of this work. And that is a big input into your master plan, your corporate strategy. And it's also, we also want to make sure that people don't think that we're thinking these are sort of like, long drawn out, waterfall processes. You also need knowledge for making your adjustments as you go through the year. How are you going to make your campaigns more effective?
Yeah, well, and also that was the interesting thing when we developed the 5. I mean, the AI topic aside, isn't it? And also, I started to write these. Do you remember I was writing a book once? Anyway, so
yes, I did.
the challenge with this knowledge thing is there's little bits of it everywhere, aren't there? So you need to do a little bit of this work or some of this work before you can come up with your master plan. So this definitely weaves into all the different things. And I think there's some really interesting stuff happening around research with AI. And so, for example, I've experimented with, and I've heard other people do this as well. So I'm not unique in this, but I've experimented with synthesized personas. So you sort of enter everything you know about your buyer, and the sort of organization that you work for, and you educate it, and then you start asking questions and testing ideas, and that's really interesting. And I found that really useful. Now, it may not be 100% accurate, as none of these things are with AI, right? So you need to test your hypotheses as best you can. But I think it's a really good way to sort of, you're not going to have a buyer sitting right in front of you to ask all the stupid questions of, right? But it's a good way of kind of developing your ideas. I've also on that kind of topic is we're also seeing synthesized research. So I've particularly been following a company called Evidenza and these guys came out of LinkedIn, and they create AI copies of your audience, and then they survey them. And if you look at their website, they share some really interesting results about the fidelity of that synthesized results that they get back compared to humans. So I think it was like KPMG or one of the big firms that they worked with, and they did a side-by-side comparison, and actually the synthesized audience were very, very close to the real thing, close enough for jazz, you know what I mean, that you could actually use it and it would be useful. And then I think and I think this was the point I was making earlier on. I think some of the AI use cases at the moment are just Google but more conversational, and that we can, we're doing the same research that we would have done before using Google and stuff, but actually ChatGPT can, or whatever tool you choose to use, Microsoft, whatever you want to use, can do it much better and more succinctly and give you a result that's a bit more consumable. So things like competitive analysis. What are our competitors saying? So bung in all of your competitors' websites and say, what are the common themes across all these websites? And also not just across your competitors, but across the category. And I think you can use this information, like B2B has got a reputation that we just copy each other. I wouldn't recommend that. But what you do know is, okay, so this is the Me Too, dull, sort of hygiene content that needs to be said. So how do I differentiate myself from that? And what's our value proposition going to be on top of that? So I think that's really interesting too, that kind of research that you can do. What say you, Jeff?
Well, I think this is one of the rabbit holes worth a whole episode, because it's likely this is, of the fundamentals we talk about, this is one that AI can probably help the most, and keep us focused on knowing, our buyers, the needs, the market. And one of the things I was thinking about as you were, just talking about, like what Evidenza can do is I was thinking like a SWOT analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so some of those questions, when I've been involved in developing SWOT analysis, it's usually, a team gets in a room, they come in from various functions within the organization. Maybe there's somebody from the outside, and you kind of go through and say, vis-a-vis our competitors, what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. A lot of that can be generated, using an AI tool, because it's going to find information very quickly, and then you can sort of test that with your internal team, or build on it, or figure out how things need to be phrased. But it's an easy way of getting some real objective look at where you stand in a market.
Absolutely. And then, of course, now we can automate this stuff at scale, right? Is you can then test that with a survey audience, right? And say, well, I know that XYZ competitor are banging on about this, but does anybody really give a shit, right? So, so you can then quickly test those kinds of things, can't you, as well? So should we go into number 3?
Number 3 is the story. And the story is the tale you weave from your brand and the attributes you want buyers to recognize in you, to the ways in which you meet customer needs and how you help improve their businesses, their own personal challenges. And in short, it's the content that you'll use in all your campaigns and communications. So and again, this is, and you'll probably jump into this, but it's like, this is where a lot of people are using AI to write the story for them, as opposed to coming up with their own.
Well, this is what we were discussing before we hit record, right? So it was, this is the low-hanging fruit of generative AI right now, isn't it? Is that we'll use it to create copy, and I think what we're trying to inspire with looking at the rest of the 5 fundamentals is I'm sure the listeners already discovered a lot of this for themselves. Is there's a lot more that you can use it for across all 5 fundamentals. But again, there's 2, and so maybe I'll cover that first. So that I think, so the copywriting thing, for me, I think the caveat on this is a bit like what we were talking about just now, is that you really need to invest time in it. And me and Robert Rose talk about this, on the Saturday show, and or on the bar, in the bar. And what he's been experimenting with when he's done it, he's actually finding his writing process is taking longer because ChatGPT or whatever the tool is he uses is helping him understand a topic in a more deeper way and taking him down a different route, a bit like our rabbit holes, right? It just exposes more information to him, and it's not really a shortcut. But what comes out is much better, obviously, because it's got a sort of a weightier bunch of research. And I think that's a way to look at this. I think so. So I think that you need to put a lot of effort in up front. Make sure you've got a good prompt, let it do its thing, and then go back to it and put the human back in, right? And because I think the other thing is, and I can't remember, we're going to discuss it today. I think what's going to be incredibly important going forward is that buyers and your audience see the human in your content, because I think we're going to be very, very sensitive to AI generated slop. And I think that it's going to be really important that you make sure that as much human remains in what's at the end. And the other thing, of course, is
as much human remains in as opposed to human remains.
Exactly.
I just thought.
But also, you need, and the other thing, of course, is it doesn't replace having a subject matter expert, because as I've seen lots of examples of this just in little things I've been working on, is if you know the topic and you see it come back with something. I mean, I've had it where it's actually attributed a quote to somebody, and I've tried to narrow that down, and eventually it admitted, oh no, it's just something like they would say, which isn't really good enough, right? So I think that you need to be an SME on the topic, and you're just helping it generate content. I don't think it replaces a subject matter expertise, and you need to get whoever on your team is your SME to go for whatever you want. So if I go back to, so I think we've covered this in the knowledge anyway, is, the other use case, of course, is using it as Google on steroids, and that to research the topics you want to discuss in your content marketing strategy. But I think one of the nice things is, and this sort of came out kind of in the early days of playing with this, is that, remember, this is the mainstream opinion. ChatGPT is sharing what it's gathered from the large language model. And so it may be that you decide, well, if that's the mainstream opinion, I want to go against that, or I want to be differentiated from that. So it may actually be telling you what not to say in a funny kind of way, right? So it helps you find your niche or your differentiated point of view and avoid being beta boring beige of the market, right? So that's what
beta boring beige.
Yeah. And I think there's one last point, and that is the rest of the creative assets to support this. And I think that, you just need to scroll through LinkedIn and you're seeing AI generated images that pretty much look like AI generated images. So I'd be really cautious about doing that. I think it's okay for throwaway creative they don't really care about. But I think that, you need a proper creator in order to define what your look is in your story, and not depend on AI for that. What say you, Jeff?
Well, I totally agree. And it was, I think it was the B2B sales and marketing benchmark that Norwest did that we reviewed a couple weeks ago, that where they said, copywriting was the number one use of AI in B2B marketing. And, it's obviously it's easy, it's simple to dip your toe in, and you mentioned all the caveats of, creating, scanning the web. So, a lot of what my understanding of AI from the very beginning of understanding it in marketing is it's as good as the data it is based on. And so if it's going out through the web and pulling information on a topic, then, it may be, it may just be too, I always hate to use the term vanilla, because sometimes I like vanilla, so
agree.
I think you use the term beige as a color, but, it's, and what you had noted about using it for, I think what Robert Rose was saying, it's like, it helps you think of other things that make you probe further and further. So it may not actually be taking less time, but it may be raising things that help you research further, test ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So and the other thing I think is important in terms of your own story making is that you've got to be talking in the lingo of your audience. If that's a particular industry, interesting terms, phrases. Obviously, AI can help you understand what those things are, but it's not necessarily going to write it that way out of the box. So this requires a lot of work to make sure your story is authentic from your company, what you can do to your audience.
Yeah, and I find that with just using Grammarly, which drives me absolutely fucking bonkers because it's like, do you want to sound more confident? No, I don't want to sound more confident because when it puts that stuff in and you end up with these staccato short sentences and these very bold statements, you're like, that's not really how I'm trying to come across. And I think that that's what you can risk with these tools is you lose. I mean, that's my personal voice, and maybe I should sound more confident, but I think
keeps telling you to take effing out of things.
Yeah, that's true as well. That's true as well. I couldn't. I think ChatGPT might swear now, but for a while I couldn't get it to, and that's also partly why I write in the way that I do to appear more human. Right? It's not that I'm. I mean, now it's going to sound like I'm swearing inauthentically.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. You want to keep your voice in these things, and I think that's the challenge with these tools, isn't it? Is there's a subtle way you want your brand to sound, and that'll iron that shit right out of it if you let it.
Yep.
So yeah. So should we move on to number 4?
Number 4 is the campaign, which is where we deliver on the master plan and with our inputs from the knowledge and the story. And so, I always have to say when we talk about campaigns, we're talking about, a whole integrated set of tactics and communications that engage a specific set of prospects and customers about their needs, and both before the sale and after the sale. So this is kind of the rubber hitting the road point in our 5 fundamentals. And so, where do you think I can help us, Ian?
I like that because I think that's one of the standard things for our of our show is rabbit holes and defining what a campaign is. So, and this is also this is where we move away from the sort of use cases that are kind of Google on steroids, or a better way to use Google. And this is actually we're starting to get, and I guess it's the same with the research, isn't it? We're getting to where these tools really do add value. So you've got the analysis of the large data models, which is what they're made for, really, isn't it? A lot of these tools. And I think there's also, I mean, we might make the point later on, I think there's an argument about, AI is being described for everything. So some of these things are not AI, right? But anyway, this is possibly where you're going to get some deep analysis of your CRM, your analytics tools, your web data, all that good stuff. And you can start to gain, and again, this could be a show on its own, and probably with a level of expertise that we'd need to apply to this. But this is where you're sort of gaining insight, you're discovering your segments, you're understanding what content and campaigns are performing well within those segments. Really sophisticated stuff that you can get done fairly quickly with these tools that you can't do manually. But I also think, and as we'll discuss in the machine in the next one, is this stuff is starting to get baked into our tools. So I think this is where we'll be less purposefully using AI. It just will be, that's what we do now, right? Like and like MarTech has always led the process in a way, right? Oh, my tools can now do this. Oh, this is now part of my marketing process. So I think that'll happen itself, won't it? I guess, and that's always been the way. I think you can also throw personalization in here, but honestly, I'm a bit sick in my throat when I think about that because I've been talking about personalization for like 2 decades. And I think there's a debate there about whether this is really AI. I mean, personalization has always been dressed up as this super fancy thing when a lot of the time it's just rules based, if somebody this, then that. But I think there's probably going to be something really interesting about making campaigns more interactive. So folks can actually respond to the campaign, sort of that chatbot style agentic AI sort of thing that maybe might become interesting. So it might be that this will actually start to drive true one-to-one personalization, but I might be getting a bit over my skis there with that one. But there's that. And then there's the other thing about campaigns, which I need to be convinced of this one, because there's a lot of buzz at the moment about AI SDRs, right, which are part of our campaign structure, right? If for marketers, I know that SDRs and BDRs sort of sit on the sales development reps and business development reps sit in that sort of no man's land between sales and marketing, and sometimes they're owned by sales and sometimes they're owned by marketing. But I'm very nervous about some of these tools that are coming through. You can do cold outreach at scale, and then that initial nurture sequence is done by the machine, and it can create the emails, and it can do the thing, and it can carpet bomb LinkedIn on all this kind of stuff, right? But I think that we need to resist this pressure and be a bit more considered about whether we choose these things, because to me, at the moment, it falls under the just because we can, should we bucket, right? So it feels to me like this could be a really great way for pissing off your entire target audience in an afternoon, right? So I'm a bit worried about it, but I think there's probably something in here that will be good. It just might be that I'm a bit of a Luddite on this, and I don't think so.
Well,
what do you think?
I like what you're saying about taking the next step behind the rules-based personalization and making things helping make things more interactive. But I think we need to resist what you said, carpet bombing. We need to resist being part of the noise and not really connecting with our buyers, our customers. And when I get approached by phone, text, LinkedIn, et cetera, when it's clearly a non-personal automated message, it's just like I just immediately dismiss it. I mean, there's too much noise in our lives, and of course the challenge is how do you break through that noise, and it's difficult. And I think that just automating a lot of interactions without a lot of thought is a way to just make more noise.
Well, and also this falls under the, you shouldn't give marketers nice things because we fuck it up, right? I mean, look what we've done to email.
Oh, I know.
It just, you know what I mean? And the thing for me is, maybe not so much recently, but it used to be that if I got a cold outreach email and it was poorly, because we're in the industry, right? And every now and again, I'd get something that was poorly targeted, or there was a mistake in it, or something like that. And I'd email the chap back or the lady back and say, thanks, but just by the way, I am not your target audience. There is something wrong with the way you're doing this here. And I'd go back and have a think about it, or, you made a mistake here, or something like that. Now, that I'm assuming that's a person, right? I think that if this continues, we're just going to assume that every email in our inbox, every in-mail in our LinkedIn, every social outreach is a bot, right? And we won't give a fuck about them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I actually cared about the fact this poor SDR has made a mistake crafting this email. But if it's just like, it's just synthesized at scale, you're not going to give a monkeys. And you're just
when you respond, it's like,
yeah. Well, you're not going to bother, right? Or you're just going to be rude because you think you're punching a machine, whereas actually, so I think that I think that this is going to be like, you shouldn't give marketers nice things because we're going to just, I don't think this is going to go well. But that's perhaps I'm being a bit negative about it. But that moves us onto the next one, Jeff.
The machine. I think you mentioned machine in your last sentence. So the machine is your marketing or revenue or sales ops, which is the process, tech, tools, data, analysis, skills, that make everything we've talked about work and make what your CMO's vision reality. So it's about building and maintaining that necessary infrastructure, of which I guess AI is going to be one of those components. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And I think that we've touched on a lot of this already, and I haven't been particularly disciplined with the points that I've shared, right? Because I think some of the stuff that we were just talking about in campaign certainly falls within the machine, right? Which is the analysis of our data. And I think when all this AI froth simmers down and we get off the peak of the hype cycle, I think, like we were saying just now, these use cases will start getting defined, and I think they'll start becoming present in our MarTech, and it'll be part of our marketing operating system, right? And it'll just be happening in the background, and that'll be that. And I think the challenge for our marketing ops team is going to be understanding what is missing from the tool of choice and what we need to augment with, what do we need to bring in, what's market bullshit, what's good stuff we need, what works with our requirements. And it's going to be our standard response, isn't it? When you're buying technology, is what's your requirements, make sure you know what they are. Yeah. So I think, and I also think, our definition of the machine in summary is the people, process, and technology. I think it's going to be interesting because I think AI is going to impact the processes, and not just automating them, but I think what's happening with things like agentic AI, I think the robots are going to be doing more of what we do in marketing. I don't think we can get away from that. I think what gets done will shrink. I think there's going to be more human in the bit at the beginning and the bit at the end that we talked about just now. But I think the stuff when it gets done is going to be done by marketing. I think that's going to be the challenge for marketing ops, is to make sure that happens, and so that our teams are really efficient. And also, like back to our Google on steroids point that we made earlier. It's a great research assistant for the marketing ops team to know, what's missing from my processes, what's best practice out there right now, and all that kind of good stuff. What say you, Jeff?
Well, one of the points I think, at least I remember making in earlier episodes is that, since AI is being infused into our tools that we use, so, that's to an extent the first place you look. What's AI? What's in my CRM system? What's in my digital asset management system? What's in my content management system? Intent plan, that is where AI is being leveraged to make those things work better, because obviously those are tools that I've selected because I need them. But that said, I would recommend, if the ops guy working with the CMO or gal working with the CMO say, what are the challenges we have that are too difficult or too costly for humans in our staff to accomplish, and then think about how AI can help. So not put AI at the front of the investigation, but sort of at the tail end. So we're having a hard time creating buying groups out of all of our account interactions. So how can AI help that? We need to do a better job of figuring out what opportunities are going to close versus what are not. How's AI going to help that? How's AI going to make sense of? We've talked to so many customers that have problems with their libraries of digital assets, and as we mentioned before, personalizing content, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's like, put that as what are the things we know we can't get to with our staff, and then say, how can AI help us there? And that may lead us back to the CRM system or the digital asset management system. And it may make us look for something new.
Yeah, but exactly what you're saying. And I think we may have made this point a few weeks ago. It's certainly something that I've talked about because I was asked about this, about, what are the, how should marketers approach AI? And I'm like, you've got this the wrong way around. It's like, look at all your processes, look at all the things that you're doing, ask why you're doing them. And then if you should be doing them, how do you optimize that with AI? Don't look at this, I've got this shiny, how do I, I've got this hammer, where are all the nails I can hit it with, or screws and everything else, So yeah, I think that's such a good point, Jeff. And I think that might have been the better point that we should just base this whole show on, really.
Well, and one of the things I remember a challenge we were having back, when we were working at the same organization, that we wanted to get into personalizing content, and I realized, we had some of the tools that could do that, but I realized how difficult it was to set up and establish, and the sort of the volume of work and input that was required to do that. And it's like, well, we don't have we didn't have the industry marketing teams, we didn't have the web people. We just didn't have all the roles that were required, and so that's where you'd say,
exactly.
The AI can help on that, and let's make sure we do it smartly.
Well, exactly. I mean, personalization's always been about that, isn't it? It's understand your audience, which we tend to spend a lot of time doing, and then understand your content, which we tend to neglect because nobody wants to create metadata or structure their content because it's fucking boring. But if you can get AI to do both of those things, right, then you're onto a winner. And that's always been I know we lived that experience however long ago it was, but that has been the consistent experience of personalization is making that connection together.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a good point, Jeff.
So I think, Ian, you have a few points. We've hit the 5 fundamentals: the master plan, the knowledge, the story, the campaign, the machine. I always love the machine. And so, but you have some final thoughts.
Yes, I do. And I know that I've got to get you out so you can go and enjoy some of the sunshine. So I'll keep this very quick, right? So, well, I don't know whether this is particularly relevant, but anyway, I think we need to be careful about what is described as AI, right? So everything's being described as AI, from rules-based personalization, data enrichment, and all those things we talked about, right? So, and we're at peak hype cycle and it's very frothy. So I think we need to be very clear about our objectives and our requirements when we're looking at AI and what's the truth in this. It seems a bit foggy at the moment. One of the things I like that I'm hearing, one of the ways of working with AI is to think of it as an assistant or intern. It shouldn't lead in any of these 5 areas we talked about, right? You're going to need your subject matter expert to spot the hallucinations versus the reality of it. And I think we need to make sure that, the thing is, it might not have been fed data that was that credible. In fact, your own data might not be very good. And so,
right.
It is. And I think, I was listening to a copywriter talking about how they use ChatGPT the other day, or was it Claude, one of them. And they were very much that you think of it as if an intern was writing your content for you. The amount of work you need to put in at the beginning in order to educate them, and then how much work you need to put in at the end to edit it and make sure. And I think that's a lot of those things. And of course, the other warning, which is a bit of a boring one, is never share commercially sensitive information in the public LLM, right? So all the things we've discussed, don't go uploading anything that you don't want other people to know, I think is the other last point there.
Yep. So, do you want to? So it's time to conclude with the song for our theme.
Yes.
Do you want to do the intro for this? This was your pick, which I
was my
heartily
pick.
Endorsed.
Even though I was very, very young when this came out, genuinely. And it's Our Friends Electric by Tubeway Army, which was the band that Gary Newman was in before he was Gary Newman. And I guess the listeners are going, I don't know who the fuck Tubeway Army is, that Gary Newman. But it's from 1979. I think hopefully you'll find it to be absolutely relevant to what we were talking about, because it's got this great lyric. I hate to ask, but our friend's electric. Only mine's broke down, and now I've no one to love. So it's like
Poor Gary.
All right, mate. So I'll play out with that. And are we in the studio next week? We are.
I think we have to discuss that on your schedule for next week. But yeah, I'll be back with something.
I'll see you then. Cheers, buddy.
It's cold outside, and the paint's spilling off of my walls. There's a man outside in a long coat grey hat, smoking a cigarette.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was a little snippet of Our Friends Electric from Tubeway Army, obviously featuring Gary Newman. And I suspect that our brief tour of AI and our fundamentals missed a few stops, but hopefully we're off to a good start with that topic, and we'll probably return to it another week. So that's a wrap on episode 289 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Jeff for his insight, and to you for putting your dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me, Jeff, and our free 5 effing marketing fundamentals ebook in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com. You can also find our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via the website or LinkedIn. Just search Rockstar CMO, and I'm sure you'll find us. But please mention you're a listener if you'd like to connect. Coming up this week, I've got a fun chat about writing with Robert in our virtual bar to share with you on Saturday. And to be honest, I need to come up with 5 effing things to discuss with Jeff next Wednesday. Any ideas are welcome, and I hope you'll join us for those here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.